You're always looking for a good Psytrance kick drum. If you're tired of looking and you just want to learn how to do it yourself, or are you just interested in kick synthesis, um, let's learn more about it today in Kick 2, and let's make a kick drum from scratch. We'll reference some other kicks that are good to learn kind of what makes a good kick, and at the end of the video you'll get a free kick that we make in the video. So let's get right into it. Alright, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. So I'm an audio engineer and music producer. I have my Psytrance project NaiLiK, and I'm starting this channel to make some tutorials. We'll do a bit about music production, synthesis and sound design. We'll probably get into mixing and mastering and anything audio that I feel like kind of talking about. So today let's get right into it. We're going to be doing kick drum synthesis, and so we'll talk a bit about the different things you can use to make kick drums. We'll get into kind of my process, and then once we make the kick in this tutorial, we'll be using Kick 2 today, and then at the end of the video you'll be able to download the kick, and then I guess we'll probably move on to other basic stuff for now before before we get into sounds and stuff. We'll start off with the basics of making a Psytrance track. So let's get right into it. Alright, so here we are in Cubase, and the first thing we're going to need to do is figure out what a kick is. So a kick is a pitch down sine wave, and basically it starts at higher pitch and very quickly it goes down to the lower pitch, which is the sub of the kick, and that's actually the note of the kick. So where do you find kicks? You can find kicks in sample packs, sometimes in samplers, and regular synthesizers can also generate or sometimes have kick presets, because you can use an envelope with a sine wave from a regular oscillator and a synth, and you can kind of make a kick. But a lot of the time, in some cases, like, you don't really have full control, or it's not very visual, and there's dedicated kick synthesizers. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, and there's two basic ones that most people use. So you have Bazzism 2, which is kind of a classic old one. You have all your parameters to make your kick. So it's, like I said, it's a pitch down sine wave. So you have the frequency start, so it starts at a higher one. You can see the cycles per second get faster over here, which means it's starting at a higher pitch. You have the ending frequency, which you can actually input the note. You have the time for the pitch sweep. I think this is the time till the end, I'm not sure exactly. Time for the decay, which is kind of like the fade out. As you can see, it adds a linear fade on the end of it. Then you have the volume sweeps. That's how quickly it goes from the higher part to starting to get to the low pitch of the kick, or the lower frequencies of the kick, sorry. You have a distortion, you have an envelope, which, because we'll keep this in mind for later, we're actually going to use Kick 2 today, but because a kick is starting at a high frequency and going to a low frequency, when you're using an envelope from left to right, it's over time, right? But it's basically an EQ on the frequency, on a specific frequency, because as we get more to the right side of the kick, that's the lower part, or the lower frequencies of the kick. So if we make some kind of dip here, we're actually going to be dipping out some kind of mid-range frequency maybe, or here we're going to be lowering the sub. So we'll bear that in mind, but I'll take a look. We'll take a look in Kick 2. So that's the other most common one, is Kick 2 by Sonic Academy. So I'll just change the name to Kick 2 so it's not confusing. Okay, so we have Kick 2. So this one works the same way, but it's a little more visual, so you can add your own little nodes and points. You can change the bend in each line between the two nodes. So this kind of works like the envelopes in Serum or LFO Tool. So you have your basic oscillator section here, Then down at the bottom we can see we have an EQ section. I'm going to turn it off. We have a distortion. I'm going to turn that off. We have a compression. We have that. We'll come back to that. And we also have 3 click oscillators. So we're going to mute all the click oscillators because we don't really need those for now. And now we're going to take a look at pretty much the steps of making a kick. But to start doing that, we're going to have to take a look at another kick that's already made, so we have kind of an idea. It'll make it a lot easier for us to start that way. So here I have 2 reference kicks, and one of them is a kick that we're going to be trying to recreate. The second one I'm not sure if we'll do because I don't want the video to be too long, but this is a great kick. My friend Mechanimal sent me this pack. It's his latest Psytrance Essentials Volume 1. Some really good kicks. So if we have time, maybe we'll look at trying to recreate a second kick, or maybe I'll do a second video to show you that the principle applies pretty much no matter what type of kick you're trying to do, even though they're similar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to analyze some things about the frequency, or the spectrum, the frequency spectrum. So we have span here, and then we have another type of scope, which is an oscilloscope, which is actually going to show us the phase. And this one's a really cool one because you're actually able to link it if you open another instance, and you can kind of like overlay the images on top of each other. So let's get back to taking some notes about this reference kick. So we'll take a listen, and we'll so if we can see here, there's definitely we can get like a kind of starting point and maybe an ending point. So I'll just kind of run the analyzer, and then I'll press hold and we'll talk about it. Okay, so we can see we have definitely some peaking stuff going on around 12.9, so we'll say about 13K here, maybe a starting point somewhere around 13, I guess. And we can see that it peaks at around, normally it's about 60 to 65, maybe I caught the image a little bit wrong, we'll look at it again. Okay, so we're at 64, 65. So that'll be our ending frequency. So now we have a good starting frequency and an ending frequency, and I'll load an oscilloscope here, which I'm actually going to buy this. I'm still using the demo. It's a really great plugin. So I named this one Kick Reference. Right? Now we're going to load another one of those on our Kick 2 channel, and we see it pops up here. So we'll name this Kick 2. So we can see we'll make one red and one very blue. So our blue one is going to be our kick, and the red one is going to be the one we're trying to kind of match. So I have to input some MIDI here. It doesn't matter what note you put, because the kick is going to use the plugin is going to use the note of your dots and how you set it up here. So it doesn't actually matter what note your MIDI is on, it'll always play the same kick. We can see. So it doesn't matter, never changes unless we change it in the plugin. So right now it'll be a little bit annoying if I just let them both play at the same time. So I'm going to lower the volume, but it'll still show up on the analyzer. So we're only listening to Kick 2's basic initialize or default preset right now. So we can see we could either have them separated, or in the second one I've combined it over here. And now we can see them perfectly overlaid. So we can see our blue kick is just way longer, right? Even though the MIDI is the same length, the kick is just way longer. So I'm going to put that up there. Keep this kind of, actually no, I'll put that there, I'll put that over there. Okay, so right away instead of touching the pitch things first, I'm going to just pull this back to the left, and we're going to check the length of our blue measurement here. Secondly, I'll just set these points kind of quickly. So we said we're going to start around 13.9, so 13.3 is G sharp, so we'll just use that. This I don't know yet, and we said we wanted it to end possibly around 65, so we'll just leave that at 65 for now as well. Okay, so let's check our length now. Okay, so we can see it's now the same length, but ours is dying off way faster. So how do we fix that? Is we go into the second tab here and we go into our amp envelope, and we can just kind of, let's just initialize this for our sake here so we could really hear the kick. So this I'm going to leave down, because if not it continues like we had it before. We don't want that. So okay, so we can see we can kind of match it, and we'll just kind of make it. Normally, if you analyze like a lot of good kicks, and well, depends what you consider good kicks, but you'll notice they often have this kind of fish shape where it goes down a little bit. So let's just kind of lightly shape it similar towards ours so that it's not so harsh. Because right now it's just pretty rough. Alright, so we can see if we're matching the blue to the red, we gotta come way more down here. So we have some kind of dip, and then it probably goes back up. We can see that. Okay, that's good enough for now. So that's just kind of a rough shape. So now we'll just see if we can kind of try and align those as good as possible. If we notice like that our reference is having more cycles going up and down than our blue one is, we need to change the actual note of one of the nodes, because that'll change how fast, that'll change how fast the cycles happen. Right? So we can see we could fit more cycles in if we put it into a higher pitch. Now we have 2, now we have 3 almost in between every red one. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to match the amount of cycles, and then if the cycles are a little bit off left or right, what we'll do is we'll actually move the point without changing the note value here marked. See, it says G sharp. So instead of changing it up or down from another note, I'll just move where my G sharp happens in time, and that'll kind of nudge the way it happens. It'll squish them together or move it to the right depending on which way you're moving it. So let's just take a look at that. And if you want a more finite control, you just have to hold control and then touch the node. So we can see we've kind of got this middle section matched. Let's play with these ones. See, so as you shift this one, you see everything else happens because it's all pushing each other. So you have to do this push and pull kind of for a while until you really match up the phases. And we can also add this curve which will nudge it. Okay, so another thing that I'm going to add is that I noticed normally to get a nicer, punchier kick, after this kind of first attack point to my first drop down in my amp envelope, I add this little kind of curve on the line, and we'll listen to it get a little punchier. So. So I think that's doing something for us there. So let's just keep working on that and keep trying to match it. It takes a little bit of time sometimes, and once you play with Kick 2 for a couple hours, you get really fast at it. So. Another thing is, if we want to get a better image here, so we'll cut our loop size in half. And instead of leaving this on a quarter note, we'll put it to an eighth note. And now we can see it's much better synced. So this is probably a little more helpful for us because we want to get into like the detail here up in the front, and it fills it up perfectly. So. You could even add an extra point if you think it will help. And what note happens affects how many cycles go on per second. So I'm going to keep working on that, and then we'll come back when we're getting pretty close and I'll show you the next steps. So here we are. We've got the second kick. So I worked on the first one, and then I started to work on the second one just off camera. Same technique, started to figure out what was the starting frequency, what was the ending frequency, and started to match it using a whole another pair of the Oszillos oscilloscope on this one. So I'll show you what we've got. I've kind of got a further version, and I'll explain what I did to get there. And then we'll do the same thing, and we'll try and get this one a little closer to the reference kick as well. So here's what we got as the second kick, the one that was, and I've got my sub pack here so I can feel a bit of the sub better, and that's kind of how I've been matching it. It helps a lot for kicks and stuff. So that's what we have coming out of Kick 2, and then here's the reference. So we can see if we look on Oszillos that we're pretty much perfectly matched up, but we're not really sounding like that. So I'm going to go on my speakers just because it's a little bit easier for me to hear that way. And let's pay attention to, once again, where this point is here, that down this low one, is going to be kind of like our EQ, where we cut out this annoying mid ringing and kind of like boxiness as well. And then this curved one here that goes up to where it comes back to like the full amplitude. The curve that we put here is kind of like, it's hard to describe, but it kind of feels like almost like as if how much the sub pushes back into being the sub, like how quickly it comes back into being sub. So we're gonna play with those like thinking of it from the EQ perspective and listen to it, and I'm gonna listen to them on my speakers, and I'm gonna try and get close, or I'll just show you what they do, and then I'll switch over to the one that I actually ended up with. So here we go. See, listen to like kind of listen to how it goes back from the mid to the bass. And when we play with this curve, and when we bring the curve up, but we bring this further back, kind of has like this relationship together. And now listen to how this one here kind of like EQs out the mid-range. So that's kind of the things that you got to point out, you got to look out for. And here's what I ended up with. Actually, this was the one that I had done before. So the last step that's missing, I feel like, is just a little bit of EQ, so we can still get really, really close. So we can get that little bit closer. So maybe we'll start playing with the onboard effects, and I'll go back into my headphones here, and we'll see if we can get a little bit better. Sorry. Oh, I just realized I have to turn this off. Whoops. Okay, so let's see if we can get better here. Also edit that a little more. So that's about as close as we can get right now, I think, with without making this video too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next step, and we'll just kind of see how do we get this out of here. We click on this little render tab here. we can click on generate. It bounces that right there, and we can just drag it into our project. So I guess it's a little bit hard to tell because this one's mono, this one's stereo, but we can see that we're lining up pretty much perfectly. We got the same length. And now the next steps would be just to, if you want to tweak it even more, just add a little bit of EQ. Maybe you want some saturation from something like Saturn, or maybe even Isotope Trash, something, I'm not sure. Whatever you guys like to use. We'll go with Pro-q 3. And we will use it in linear phase for the cuts. And we'll just see if we can fine-tune it a little more. So we'll put that in green and our reference in orange. So you just do some rough shaping. Here we have the final kicks. Pretty much just worked on them a tiny bit more in kick 2 as I was EQing them. And so we'll listen to the reference first, and then we'll switch over to the one that I made. And that's the one I made. So it can still use a little bit more of a cut, but I would probably bounce that and then continue working on that from a new render. So here is the second one. It's the mechanical kick, really great pack. And then we'll play the one that I was trying to remake and recreate that one as best as I could. So there's the kick. And then here's ours now with a bit of EQ. That one's pretty close. So guys, that was the main point of the video. I'm going to keep tweaking on it. The main thing is you just got to keep trying, spend a couple hours with it, and make a few versions where once you start getting close, you make one, you close it, the next day you come back, you keep working towards it, and you'll make some really, really powerful kicks that you can use in all of your tracks. So I hope you liked it. Like and subscribe because there's going to be some more videos coming soon. And thanks for watching.